All right, we're going to talk about billing today for our project management lecture. But first, I wanted to quickly review some things with you here. And see if we can open this up a little bit. It's taking some time. Okay, we'll try this again here. And we will just kind of go through it like this. So again, check the Learning Suite dates on the schedule for your assignments that are due. The past couple of lectures, we talked about cost control and change orders. And so when you're looking at cost control, we talked about the main things that you're going to be managing as a project manager in terms of cost, with labor and general conditions being the most risky for you. And then we talked about knowing what the budget is, knowing the budget amounts, the different phase codes, cost types, making sure that you're assigning costs to each of those phase codes and cost types correctly so that you keep your project budgets clean and your accounting clean so that you understand where the money is going on a project. And then you're checking that job cost detail report every month, making sure that people's times got allocated correctly, that invoices got paid to the correct job so that you're not ending up paying for other people's projects on your project, and that your cost is being tracked correctly. And so then you're going to do a cost projection every month to make sure that all of the costs are projected so that you know whether your project's healthy or not, so that you have some idea of how you're spending your money on the project as you go through. Then we talked about what time cost control system measures. This is where we talked about budgeted cost of work scheduled, budgeted cost of work performed. And we're looking at time, cost, and performance, how they're actually doing, how their productivity is being measured on the project. And then our estimate at completion, we're kind of estimating based on the rate that we're going, how can we at this spot in time determine whether our project is healthy or not, whether we're spending too much money or we're not working fast enough. We can determine those things by looking at our ACWP, BCWP, BCWS, and doing our formulas for that, looking at our variances and then our estimate at completion. And then we talked about change orders in our last lecture. The best price usually comes on bid day. That's when competition is there. And then change orders can add, deduct, or provide no change in the cost. And then we talked about different documents that might initiate a change order. And an RFI would be one from the contractor side. The rest of these would be from the architect side, documents that you would receive from the architect side. And an ASI, architect supplemental instruction, that is going to be a $0 change order in most cases, or it should be. Doesn't always end up that way. If you have $0 change orders for a subcontractor, sometimes you'll issue those so that you can let them know that they don't have any right to ask for changes afterwards. So if they haven't given you a price when you send out a request for proposal or request for pricing to them, then you might send them a $0 change order that lets them know they've accepted that change order request. So let's say it's PR number 14. You send out a document saying $0 for PR's number 14. Then later they come back and say, hey, there's a price change for this. I didn't know about it. And you say, yes, you did. You signed a change order right here saying that there was no cost impact. So that's just a protection for you. When you go ahead and do a $0 change order, you're locking in a price, even though it's a $0 change. So you also have deductive change orders. And again, you're not going to add fee on your deduction. You're not going to take away fee. You're just going to take away the amount that's given in there. And the formal change order form is the G701. So now we're going to talk about billing. So cash is the lifeblood of any project. Without cash, you can't buy materials, you can't pay your employees, you can't pay your subcontractors, etc. And so getting paid is critical for a company. And as a project manager, you need to manage this process really carefully. With this whole coronavirus shutdown, if they start shutting down construction projects, our big general contractors are going to be in a world of hurt because the way that they generate income is by putting work in place. And so if they're not able to put work in place and bill for those activities, that's going to financially impact a lot of general contractors in a really negative way. In the 2008 recession, that's what ended up happening to a lot of contractors is they kept working and they weren't getting paid, and all of a sudden they were financing the project and they ended up going out of business because they continued to work with the promise from the owner, oh, we'll get you paid, we'll get you paid, and they just kept working without getting any payments back in. And so that's a challenge that's going to be facing the industry if construction ends up shutting down for very long. And so during contract negotiations or your pre-construction meeting, you need to discuss the pay application process with the contractor and architect and the owner. Everybody needs to be involved in that. And so it's important that all three parties understand how that process is going to work so that you're getting people paid in a timely manner. You want to be able to look at the procedures and say, here's when you want to show up, or check when the bill should show up is what you're looking for, and when that bill is going to get paid. And so you want to be able to bill on a percent complete basis. That's the most common way that we bill in construction, is on percent complete. And so you might go out to the project and say, oh, well, we're 10% done. And so you're going to bill 10% of the project amount. And the architect will walk the project and the owner will walk the project, and they'll look and they'll say, yeah, that looks about 10%. Whether that's 9% or 11% or 13%, we don't always know. But we still bill on a percent complete basis just because construction companies aren't really geared up to provide an invoice for every single thing on a project. That would create so much more paperwork, to where if you had to provide a materials bill backup for every piece of material that went into the project, it would become very burdensome. And so most contractors and architects and owners have agreed on the percent complete basis, and they kind of go off of that, because we want to focus on building projects, not on countless amounts of paperwork. And so it's been said in construction that construction is the only business where you have to work harder than any other profession and then beg to get paid. Most of the time in most businesses, you walk in and you say, okay, I would like that product. And you give them the money and then they give you the product. Well, in construction, we have to give them product without them paying us and hope that they pay us at some point. And then we'll get a little bit of money for them, and then we give them a little more product, and then they give us a little more money. And we don't get our full amount of money to build a project until the very end of the project. And so it's a little bit different than most industries. And so once you've set the agreement for how you're going to get paid on a project, you need to stick to it exactly. Let your subcontractors know how that's going to be, and let your owners know up front that you expect to be paid according to those procedures that have been set up. And so when we talk about what that process is, we submit what we call a pay application. And the most common method for payment in commercial is our monthly payments that we get on a percent complete basis. And so we need to submit our pay applications monthly. And the most common form of a pay application is the AIA form G702. So I'm going to show you an example of the G702. So here's an example of a G702. It's an Excel version, which is okay if you're going to use an Excel version. You got to make sure that you're tracking all of your costs correctly if you do it in Excel. Most project management softwares will have a pay application software in it, or your accounting system will. Viewpoint, Procore, things like that. You can do your billings in those software. But for this example, we're just going to show you an Excel version. So, excuse me, the application for payment. So normally you would have up here your owner listed, what project it is, the architect, the contractor. You can see up here it's pay application number 1. And so we look at our original contract sum, net change by change orders, what our new contract would be, and then we'll talk about the different line items here as we go through. And then the contractor signs it. They get it notarized by a notary saying this is official document, this is what we're submitting, we want to get this paid for. And then the architect looks through it, and if it's all okay, then they would give the amount here that they've certified is okay for the owner to pay the contractor, is what that item's looking for. So the architect looks at this, and then the owner, once the architect agrees to it, the contractor and architect to both sign it, then the owner is obligated to pay the contractor for the work that's being done. Now, the backup behind G702 is a G703. So this document here is what we call the schedule of values. So if you see in term SOV, that's schedule of values. So this is basically telling us the detail of what we're billing for. You're giving them a breakdown, your scheduled value or your estimated amount, your budgeted amount for what that is going to cost on the project. And so usually this is set forth in the contract. So you'll create your first pay application amount with the budget that you're going to be billing for on a project. It includes that schedule of values to help the owner know what they're paying for, right? Because if I just said concrete, and I have my concrete here, I've got 82,000 plus 40,000, so that's 122,000 plus 32,000, $154,000 in concrete. If I just said, oh, well, I'm 50% done, well, all of a sudden I'm paying $75,000 as an owner, where you might only have the concrete footings done, and that's only worth $32,000. And so as an owner, I'm going to be questioning whether or not you're really 50% done. You might say, well, I've got all the footings done. Well, as an owner, they might not know whether that's a 50% of the entire project or not. And so you've got to be careful with that. And so the schedule of values is usually broken down into divisions. And so in the item number over here, I've kind of broken it down per division. So like division 3000 would be concrete, division 4000 masonry, 5000 steel, 9000 would be our finishes. And it's cost related, and that budget is the same from the very beginning of the project. So that this schedule of values is a contract document that won't change throughout. It can be amended by change order, and I'll show you that here in a minute, but the original budget numbers, these numbers will always stay the same because it's part of the contract documents. So when you prepare a schedule of values, you need to use your best judgment as the detail that you put into it. You could put tons of detail, or you could put very little detail. Sometimes it depends on what the owner wants. So if I was just going to put concrete and I just put concrete at $154,000. Well, the owner might have a question on, well, how do I know how much is done, right? And so sometimes more information is better for the owner, and sometimes not having all the information is better. For a contractor, it's better to not have that much information. For the owner, it's better to have lots of information so that they can see exactly what they're paying for. But at the same time, you've got to balance that, and use your best judgment to see how much level of detail the owner wants. Because you could break in the concrete footings and say, concrete footings, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. And you've got all of these different amounts, and they're all $1,000 each, and you're just overwhelming. And then this SO, or the schedule of values, becomes pages and pages long for the owner, and it becomes a little bit overwhelming. And so you want to give them enough detail to where they know what they're getting. So if they say, oh, concrete footings, I can look and say, yeah, those are done, then that's great. But then they still know that they've still got money out there for foundations and slabs and other things that they're looking at, so that they know exactly what they're paying for. So be forthright with the owner, be honest with them, show them what they're getting, give them enough level of detail so that they don't have a lot of questions, but don't overwhelm them at the same time. So the G703, along with your schedule of values, shows you the amounts that you have billed for. And so for each item, the percent complete, the retainage, any change orders that have approved, and stored materials that you're billing for. So I went ahead and set up just a fake G703. So you can see that all of these numbers add up to our total here, 2,295,000, and that's the same number as our original contract on the pay application. So I've got that item here, and then I start saying what work I have completed. And so I start looking and I start saying, okay, as a contractor, my goal is to bill for as much as I can. But you don't want to become dishonest and say, well, I've done 80% and you've only done 20%. That loses trust of the architect and the owner. But if you can bill for 11% instead of 10%, sometimes that's to your benefit, because then you are trying to work off of a positive cash flow as opposed to you financing the project. So one of the things that we would do as a general contractor is we would usually try and bill our general conditions based on number of months we had on the project. So if we had a 1-year project, if it was 12 months, I would say I'm going to put $100,000 in on that first month. So I'm going to try and negotiate with the owner to say, hey, I'm going to bill out my general conditions on an equal basis throughout the year, just 12 equal payments of $100,000. Now, am I going to spend $100,000 on my general conditions in the first month? Probably not, because I've just got a superintendent there that's just kind of getting work going. I don't have everything on site yet. Not a lot of management time is being spent yet. And so I might be able to get ahead in my billings just on my general conditions to where I'm working off the owner's money instead of my company's money. And then let's say we came in and we got clear and grub. So they just cleared all the ground, got the site ready for us, and then they started excavation. They got that all done this month. They haven't backfilled yet, but then we go through our concrete footings. Let's say we are 50% done with our concrete footings, so that's 16,000 there. We haven't done anything with our foundations yet, but let's say that with our concrete foundations, we ordered $10,000 of our rebar and our formwork. And it's on site and it's ready to go. And so that would be called a material stored in place. And so if I've got all of my rebar and it's ready to be put into the project and I've already bought it and paid for it, then I, as a contractor, can get paid for materials that I'm storing that I haven't put into place. So as long as it's just the materials that I've bought, that's okay. And another thing, like let's say down here in rough electrical, maybe they've started, they've put in $5,000 worth of work. They started putting in some underground lines, and then they ordered $5,000 worth of conduit on their project, and they want to get paid for that, and it's sitting in their warehouse. Can we pay them for things that are sitting in their warehouse? Yeah, we can, but we want to make sure that there's a couple things that we have in place that are protecting those monies that we're going to pay them. And for materials stored in place, one of the things you always want to get is a certificate of insurance for those materials, letting us know that if anything happens to those materials while it's sitting in their warehouse, that we're still covered, that we're not going to have to pay for those again. And also you want photos of the material that show that it's marked for our project. So if it's for the BYU Snell building, you would have them marked on those materials, BYU Snell building. You go down and take pictures of it, and you get the insurance information saying that those items are protected, then it's okay to pay them. So even though that work hasn't been put in place, you can still get paid for materials that are stored. And so that's what you're looking at here. And so for this month one, here's where we're looking at. We've got $100,000 in general conditions, $13,000 clear and grub, $25,000 in excavation. Our concrete footings, we're 50% done, and our concrete foundations, we are billing for all the materials that we've bought. And then we've done $5,000 worth of underground, and we ordered some materials. Okay, so we would take this number here and add all these up, and then add these up as well. And then we would say over here, our total completed and stored to date is 100,000. And then 13,000, 25,000, 16,000, 10, and then 10,000 over here. This number there. So far we've billed 174,000 of our 2295. So our percent complete would equal this number divided by our budgeted amount. So total project, we're 7.58%. Now as I go up here, so on my general conditions, I'm 8.3%, 100% on clear and grub, 100% on excavation, 20% on electrical. Now, if I'm just underground, that might be a concern for the architect. They might say, wait, 20% done, and we haven't even gotten anything into the building yet. The architect might not want to sign off on that, so they might come and tell you, no, I want you to change that to 2,500, and so this would be 7,500 there. So then they say 15%, I feel more comfortable with that amount. Okay, and then your balance to finish would equal your budgeted number minus your total completed and stored to date. So you're saying that's how much we've got left to finish. So I've still got $2 million left to finish. And then something else that happens is the owner, when they give you a check, they're not going to give you the full amount that you ask for. So even though you are 7.4% complete, and you're billing for 171,000, you're not going to get that whole 171,000. So you are going to get equals this number times so add that. So they are going to pay you 171,500 minus $17,150. They are going to hold this money in retainage. If the retainage was 10% on a project, sometimes it might be 5% or 10%. Oftentimes we would try and negotiate into our contract that it was 10% for the first 50% of the project and then no retainage after that. So essentially it was a 5% retainage, because that money that they're holding is money that you're not able to operate with, that you're waiting until the very end of the project to get your money. And so if we finish the entire project and they're still holding 10%, we're not really getting our fee until the very, very end. We're not getting to use any of our fee till the end. And so we want to try and get that retainage as low as possible as we do that. And so as you're preparing your pay application, you want to be conservative in your amount, but you also want to bill for what you can. If you're too aggressive and you overbill the owner, then that can delay your payment because they're questioning and trying to figure out whether that's okay. They're going to have more questions, but if you submit a reasonable pay application, it's more likely to get accepted. And then you want to, like I said, if you can get 11% instead of 10%, that's great. Then you're working off of your owner's money and not your money as much. Owners want to work off of your money. And so you just kind of got to balance that and try and maintain a positive cash flow without getting too far ahead. And then once you've submitted your pay application, so then we go back to our G702. And so our total completed and stored to date would be 171,500. Retainage, so percent, that would be 10% of completed work. And so our completed work is column is 156,500. So 156,500. So this is going to be, let's say, equals 156,500 times 0.1. So that's how much they're doing of that, and then 10% of stored materials, which equals here. So $15,000. So that would be 1,500. So equals that. Times. So all of these formulas aren't feeding each other yet. You can set them up to feed all the numbers that you enter in. 0.1. So we've got 1,500 there, and then this number equals this plus this. and that tells us how much retainage we've got. So then we take our total earned less retainage, so what we've earned up here. So we say equals this number minus our retainage that's being held, and our previous certificates for payment. This is month 1, so we haven't billed before, so that's going to be 0. So 0 there. And then our current payment due would be that $154,350. That's how much we're billing for. And then we take our current contract sum to date minus what was being billed, what we're billing for. And we've got $2,140,650 left. That's how much the owner still owes us on the contract. Now, if I've got this previous payments, so next month I'm going to show that I've billed $154,000, and plus my new bill, that would lower my balance to finish, including retainage. And so then my amount certified over here would be what I'm billing for on my current payment due. Now, if I go to my G703 and then go to my pay application, let's say this is pay application number 2. And so I've been working on the project, and now I've got $55,000 worth of change orders. Well, I go and I say, well, what are those change orders? Well, go to your G703, and if you look down here, I've added 2 change orders. And so I've added some stone for $15,000, and then I've added an electrical generator for $40,000. So I didn't change any of my amounts up here in my original schedule of values. I added new items to the schedule of values. That's where the change orders will take place. And then these become new items that will need to be paid for. And so from our previous application, we billed 100,000 here, and we billed 13,000 of that, 25,000 of our excavation we did. Our concrete footings, we billed 16,000. Our concrete foundations, we did 10,000. And then our rough electrical, we did 7,500. Okay, so we already billed that 7,500 over here. And so we're showing that they're not going to be material stored in place, presently stored, because we already bought that. Okay. So we look at that. We'll do bill for anything else. Nope, doesn't look like it. So we're back over here. We're showing that. We could put in our retainage over here. Equals 0.1 times our total completed and stored to date. So there. These values that aren't showing up here right now. Okay. So equals modify this number over here. percentage. So we're showing 7% here, and we can add our decimals here. Okay, so now, since we have change orders, we're actually a little bit lower in our percent complete because of our total value. But our number of what we've billed is the same. So now we're into month 2, and we're going to bill another 100,000 in our general conditions. Clear and grub, that's already 100% complete, so we're not billing any there. We're going to say we're 8,000 on our backfill. Our concrete footings, we finished those up this month. And our foundations, we're halfway done with those. So we got paid for that material already, and then we did another $10,000 worth of work. Our electrical, we did another 2,500 there. And then we ordered some steel. And so we ordered $15,000 worth of steel, and it's sitting in the steel erector shop. They want to get paid for it. So again, we're going to make sure we have insurance on that, and then we're going to take pictures of it. And then you'll get some retainage on that number as well. So equals 0.1 times that number there, and this number equals it's actually structural steel minus total completed and stored to date. So 47,000 left to finish. So that's what we're looking at here. So we build another 136. So all of these would be, do this the same. This number, so equals this number minus total completed and stored to date. I put 0 here. Yeah, if we do this, that should work. Okay. So now we're looking, our original budget is $2,350,000. That's how much we billed for. Total 323, so we're just over 2 million there. 32,000 in retainage. So then we go back to our G702. Here's this number that's changed. We follow the same format, following the total completed and stored to date. So we would bring that over, that 323,000. 3,000 right there. Retainage, that's 10% again. And this might change throughout your project, or it might stay the same. So we're looking at that. Numbers, total retainage equals the however much you've been completed there equals these two numbers summed up. So far you've been there holding out $32,000 of the 323 that you've asked for. So this number equals 323 minus your retainage. So that's how much you've earned, less how much you got paid last time, which would be 154,350. So your current payment due would equal 290 minus 154. So you're going to get 136 this time. Is how much you're going to get, and then your balance to finish less retainage, or including retainage, will equal your current contract minus this number minus this number. So you still got $2,059,300 left to bill. Now that shows different than what you've got to finish because it's including your retainage as well. So that's what you want to look at there. So once you've submitted your pay application, you'll go through this every month. Again, you'll make sure that the contractor approves it. And any time I bill for a change order, I would just add that money onto the work that I've gotten done. So if I was going to charge 20 or 50% for the generator, and I'm going to hold it in my shop, then I'm going to put $20,000 on there, and then that's going to change my numbers if I put in those formulas correctly. So you just bill for a change order same as you would for other items that are on there. Now, once you've submitted your pay application, it's beneficial to reach out to the owner a few days before it's due, just to make sure that everything's on track and that they don't have any questions. It also reminds them that it's due soon. And if a payment isn't received when it's expected, call to see what the problem is. Make sure you're setting those expectations up front that you expect to be paid on the days that you've agreed upon. The longer a late payment exists, the longer it is, or the harder it is to collect on that payment. And so if they don't think they're accountable, they'll let payments slip. And then in commercial construction, if you have subcontractors with large contracts, you're going to want them to follow the same exact procedures. So most of them will submit a G702 and G703 to you so that you can understand what they're billing for. That's why when we did our subcontractor writing your subcontract example, we had them provide a schedule of values on the roofing example that we did when we wrote our subcontract so that you can know what they're billing for as well. So you can say, well, do I feel comfortable paying you this much for the work that you've done? Or no, I think you're overbilling me. I don't want to get you out too far ahead. And so they just create their own line items on their G703. Most contractors have what we call a pay when paid clause with their subcontractors, which means that when the general contractor gets paid, that's when the subcontractor gets paid. And so if the general contractor doesn't get paid from the owner, then they're not on the hook to pay the subcontractor until the owner pays the general contractor. And so make sure that's in your contractor and make sure you know what those contracts say. And you need to make sure that the subcontractors get their bills in on time. As a project manager, a lot of times you're chasing them every month saying, hey, we need your bill. How much are you billing for? We need to be able to get this in. And a lot of times you'll provide backup to the owner to say, here's why we're billing so much. Here's subcontractors' bids, especially if it's on a CMGC or a cost plus, where those bids or where the numbers are a little bit more open. You're showing your books to the owner saying, here's what our subcontractor billed for, here's the backup, and we're happy to show you that. On a traditional method or hard bid, you wouldn't show that information to the owner. They don't get to see that information. You just bill for what you're doing on a percent complete basis. And then another thing that's helpful to owners in billing is to prepare a cost-loaded schedule. So for those of you that have had scheduling, you know what a cost-loaded schedule is, or you've worked on that. And what that does is that tells the owner, based on your estimation, how much money they should expect to spend every month. So if it's $2 million, you might say, well, you're going to spend $170,000 the first month, and then, plan on about, 150 for the next 3 months, and then it's going to ramp up to $300,000 or $400,000 for a few months, and then it's going to trickle down towards the end to be a little bit less. And what that does for an owner is that helps them know how much they should be planning on asking their bank for financing. Because most owners don't just have all this cash on hand, they're working with banks to get financing, and that helps them know, hey, at this stage in the project, I need to have more money available to be able to pay for the project that's going on. And so that's some of the things that you're going to look at. Some of the things that affect your payments, schedule values amounts, your percent complete. Sometimes it's hard to say, well, I'm guessing 25, and the architect says, well, I feel like it's 20. Who's to say one person's right versus the other person? Sometimes that percent complete's a hard amount to judge, but you want to come to a good conclusion with your architect and say, hey, let's negotiate here and look for those opportunities. And then retainage is important. Change orders, paid materials, other things that you're looking at. And so that's kind of the pay application process for the commercial projects. On residential projects, it's a similar process, but it's not quite as formal. Most residential projects have a construction loan attached to it. And so the bank is financing the project, and you as a contractor will submit draws or payment applications, but we call them draws. And so you'll say, well, I need $25,000 for framing, and my framing is halfway done, and I've got a $50,000 budget for framing. I need $25,000 to pay my framer. Well, you're going to submit that bill to the bank, and the bank is going to come out and send somebody to look at the project and say, is 50% of the framing done? Yep, it's done. We'll release that check. And so usually draws for the bank are every 2 weeks or every month, depending on what your bank will allow. And so similar process, just not quite as formal. But the bank, they always come out and do inspections. Sometimes they might send third-party inspectors out to come and check for them, but they're looking at that. And so you want to make sure that you are trying to always bill for the most that you can. So when we talk about kind of billing profitably, you're going to bill for the most amount that you can. You're always going to bill on time is another one. And you're always going to submit your bills in the exact format that the owner asked for. Don't give them a reason not to pay you. You want to make sure everything's there and in order for you to get paid, because billing is the activity that turns work into money, and money is king, right? That's how we operate. That's how we pay our people. That's how we hit payroll and insurance and everything else. And like any other activity on a project, it has to be scheduled, organized, monitored in order to be profitable. And so the basic rules are completeness and accuracy in terms of billing. It's important not to do work until payment is received. Like I mentioned before, lots of contractors went out of business because they kept financing owners' projects. They didn't get paid 1 month, and they just kept working, and the owner kept promising on them, yeah, we'll get you paid, and then all of a sudden it's 3 months out, and the contractor's put in $1 million worth of work and hasn't been paid for it, and they aren't able to absorb that, and they end up going out of business. And so it's very critical that you don't continue to work until you've been paid. Now doesn't mean you shut down the day that the bill wasn't due, but you need to make sure that you're coordinating with the owner and checking that and not getting too far out before you decide to stop. And then other things that come with bills, when you pay your contractors or when the owner pays you, they are going to request with every check that you get or that you send out that you're going to get a lien release, which means that the person getting paid signs a form saying, I have been paid for this work that I've billed for, and I am signing away my right to lien the project for this amount. And that's an important thing to do to get from your subcontractors. And it's an important thing that the owners will make you sign to say, hey, we've paid you for this work. You don't have any legal right to lien this project for this amount of work or this amount of money because you've been paid for it. And so that's something that's important as well. You'll have a payment application assignment. One of them will be very similar to the G702 and the G703 assignment that I've given you, kind of walked you through here. You'll be doing an example of that. And then another one's just kind of a basic pay application principle. There's two problems. They're both on Learning Suite. You'll go ahead and open the quiz on Learning Suite or the exam on Learning Suite, the pay application exam, and you can use notes and figure out what you need to do to complete the assignment, but you'll go through and answer the questions will be on there, and the attachment for the assignment and the instructions are in the quiz. So once you open the quiz, that assignment attachment will be available to you there to be able to work on, and you're allowed to go in and out of the quiz and do what you need to do. But this pay application Excel sheet is in, let's see here, make sure I'm on the right one. If you go to course content, oh boy, let's see that stuff here. If you look really close, you might have seen some answers. But hopefully you understand it because you're gonna have to do it on the test anyways. Then we'll go back to share screen now. That's off of there. So if you go to AIA documents, the copy of the G702 and G703 is right there. And you can just upload it and then go ahead and put in formulas and learn how that works. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out either by phone or by email. I'll try and get back with you as quickly as possible. And that's it for today. Thanks.